Greetings and welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. As you can see, I have two fantastic guests here. I'm going to introduce them in a second. I just want to let everybody know it seems to be out there in the community that the UAP Disclosure Act is not apparently in the upcoming National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. I will come back in the future and talk about that because that is important. It's very topical. It's interesting and relevant. However, that is not to make this conversation any less interesting, because these two gentlemen, filmmaker Darcy Weir and Andy Marcial, his partner in this last film that they created, have some fascinating things to share with us about the island of Puerto Rico, one of the most fascinating areas of the world in terms of UFO, UAP, and USO activity. And these two gentlemen, in my view, are here to remind all of us why this subject of UFOs, UAP, whatever you want to call it these days, is so important to our world. It is absolutely relevant and topical. And I'm really, really happy to have you both back, because we were together some months ago for a previous project that you were both working on. And you are now here for a film that I just watched about 2 hours ago. And I'm really, really glad that I did. It's called Transmedium, Puerto Rico's UFOs. And Darcy, let me just start and ask you, since you're the filmmaker here, what motivated you to do this? What was your concept going in? And Andy, I guess jump in anytime as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on to talk about this latest research and work that we put together. The idea behind the doc really kind of manifested before our eyes, before our hearts and minds, as we decided that we wanted to work on another story together. After I'd met Andy in New York, when I was interviewing him in the Transmedium documentary that I interviewed you, Rich, he was talking about the CBP footage, that Department of Homeland Security leak sort of footage with, the A-10 Warthog, the rubber duck footage, the La Bruja. This was controversial. It was something that later CBP confirmed at the end of August of 2023. But we knew that we're both in like the same age range. We're both like, similar dudes when it comes to approaching the subject. And we wanted to follow another story. And Andy is Puerto Rican. He wanted to, he reminded me that Puerto Rico is a hotspot for UFO activity. And when it came to CBP footage that was just as prominent as the other stuff that was leaked, he said, dude, the Aguadilla 2013 UAP footage, that's like the best footage out there. SCU, Robert Powell, did an amazing write-up on that. And these guys poured over that and really, there's a Proof is Out There History Channel show where they usually are debunking a lot of this stuff. But for the Aguadilla footage, they could not debunk it. They thought this was like the best UAP footage out there in the wild. So I reached out to, with the help of Andy, Jorge Martin, or Jorge Martin. And this is a Puerto Rican native. He's been studying UFOs for 4 decades, better part of 4 decades. And Jorge wanted to work with us essentially. And just off the very first call I had with him, he said he could introduce us possibly to the agent from CBP who leaked the Aguadilla 2013 footage. And I lost my mind, called up Andy and said, we're going to Puerto Rico.
Andy, I want you to jump in, but please let me just say a couple of things here. So when you say the CBD, that's the Customs and Border Patrol, CBP, And you were originally referring to a really interesting couple of videos that Andy, who we're going to get to, was instrumental in getting out there to the world. So we talked about that. That was fascinating. And Andy, I think you were right on to talk about the Aguadilla 2013 video. This is famous. In fact, I'm going to just share my screen. There's one screenshot that is from your video, gentlemen, that I took a couple of screenshots of this here. Many people are familiar with this, and it's a video that shows an object coming in. I want you to describe this, Andy, in a second. Over the airport at Aguadilla, it's the northwest tip of Puerto Rico, not seemingly, going into the water as well as dividing into two, and before it's lost in the water again. It's fascinating footage. You mentioned the SCU, that's the Scientific Coalition of Ufology. They did I think 200, almost 300-page paper study on this. They went deep into that, and I don't think one can genuinely debunk this video. I'm with both of you on this. Andy, talk a little bit about this, the Aguadilla video. You and Darcy did a real dive. And oh, by the way, Jorge Martin is someone I have admired. I've got one of his books lying around here. I was just reading it. I'm doing research on USOs as well. Jorge Martin's work is very, very important. He is the premier UFO researcher of Puerto Rico for many, many years. And getting him to participate in your film, I think, is a real score. But Andy, welcome to the program. I loved you in this, and just talk a little bit about what you did with Darcy in Aguadilla.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. Well, as you could possibly have imagined, I was kind of freaking out when we found out we actually were going to speak face to face with this individual, because that, to me, has been the #1 video that, I mean, it's just irrefutable evidence.
So Jorge Martin was going to connect you to the individual who leaked the Aguadilla video. I think I might have talked over Darcy for that, but that's really key. So go on.
Yeah, so like you said, he knew of him. We found out through Jorge. Darcy let me know, and that's basically when we decided, all right, we're going, because I mean, we were not going to pass this up. It's the first time anybody ever spoke to this individual or met the person who actually leaked it. So again, I was kind of geeking out with this, but you know, it's the most important because it shows something that clearly is not of our technology. It's not something that we can do, or that I've possibly I've seen anything with military that can come anywhere close to what this thing was able to do, that was caught on video. And as you saw in the clips, what I'll describe as the object came in from the ocean. It was supposedly seen on radar out in the waters, and the tower had let the pilots know that there was an object to kind of keep an eye out for. They saw a light out in the water that then turned off as it was approaching land, and that's when they instructed the individual with operating the FLIR to take a look and see if he could see an object. Or see
may
something.
I just jump in and point out, you were interviewing the gentleman who leaked the video, who worked there, and he said to you, I don't think that I knew this before. Maybe I just knew and forgot. But he said the object definitely came in from the ocean. But that's not immediately obvious when you look only at the video, because as you just pointed out, they started recording the video after the object was over land. So I just think it's kind of a nice point to remember that you had one eyewitness saying, oh yeah, this thing came in from the ocean and then came over the airport there. I just wanted people to get that point.
Well, again, apparently, from what I understand, based off of the SCU report, if I'm not mistaken, it was originally seen on radar first out in the waters. Apparently, they would see it in one location, they'd get a blip, and all of a sudden the blip would disappear and pop up miles away. So that's where they kind of were like, all right, they didn't know if it was something wrong with the equipment, but then alerted them just in case to see, if there was something out there. And that's when it was seen coming in. And as We all know the object was tracked for a good about 3 minutes, flying over the Rafael Hernandez Airport. Very low too. At some points during the footage, you could see that it was flying between homes, flying between telephone poles. So it was very, very low to the ground. The agent had mentioned how the object was almond shaped and was oscillating, which I never noticed until he brought it up, and I really paid attention to the footage. He was right. The object is kind of doing a wobble, or maybe possibly rotating as it's flying, and you see it heading towards the beach. You can see the waves of the water, and then it just goes right in, disappears under the or at least submerges, and then at one point splits into two, which is already, like, I mean, if it wasn't incredible enough that it went into the water without any disturbance, to see this thing split into two identical parts that both disappear in two different directions under the water.
Plus, it goes into the water without losing any speed, apparently, or
kept
any
that
significant speed.
Nothing. I mean, they didn't even make it. At least from the footage, they didn't even make a splash. Like, how is that possible?
That's one of the 5 observables of UAP, right? The transmedium nature of this object. And that's why, it was the opening of this documentary about transmedium objects. Sorry.
Oh, no, well, you interviewed another FLIR expert, forward-looking infrared radar expert named Dave Falch.
That's right.
And I thought he was very compelling, very interesting. And maybe Darcy, you can describe what he had to say about this video.
Yeah. So Dave, I actually met through Andy. Andy became friends with Dave because Dave was poring over the original Department of Homeland Security CBP footage that was recorded in FLIR. And Dave's backstory is pretty interesting. He himself has seen a UAP or a UFO through FLIR camera technology that he was repairing during his day job. Like, his 9 to 5 is repairing the same high-end, super expensive, forward-looking infrared camera technology that would have been on the CBP plane that caught the Aguadilla footage. And, many other CBP planes out there and other, I guess, countries that are using this technology. He thinks it was an MX-15 system that was recording the footage that heralded the Aguadilla 2013 footage. But before that, he was actually at one point working with Mick West. Mick West was sending him the Tic Tac, the FLIR, Tic Tac FLIR, the Go Fast, Gimbal, all, you name it, and was saying, what is it in this footage that you think would be anomalous or prosaic? And Dave was literally saying to Mick, this footage seems to be anomalous. It doesn't seem to, all of these videos do not seem to act like the exhaust of a fighter jet, a bird, a mylar balloon, or a latex, just normal balloon. Like, he basically showed Mick what all of those would look like because he's actually done the tests with the same type of systems. And Mick told him to basically take a hike, and they had a falling out. But Dave basically turned his eyes to the Aguadilla footage and did an analysis for this documentary, and then lent his own personal story so that we could highlight that, again, this is something that's seen by fighter pilots. It's seen by CBP agents, security forces and agencies of North America. It's also seen by regular citizens like himself and you and I. So we really wanted to include his testimony to just show the credibility behind the footage.
Well, I'll just add, he had a lot to say about that video and made, I thought, very compelling arguments as to why that object was not a balloon, like absolutely not a balloon. and really not anything else that, even like a drone, which you might think it's a drone, but you have a drone that's transmedium and that somehow divides into two, seems to be well beyond any kind of drone technology that we're familiar with. And then his personal story was actually something that I think you showed a clip of it, which was very interesting. And can I just say he's capturing it on infrared FLIR, but they also had non-infrared cameras that this thing apparently was cloaked or invisible. You could not see it visually, but they captured it on infrared. And then I think he said, well, we wanted to get even a high res infrared, a better camera. And when we came back, the thing was gone. But he did capture something on the FLIR, which you showed in your movie.
Yeah, and I think that's there's two data points that are important there. One is that that's a common characteristic of UAP UFOs, right? People have been UFO hunters, for lack of a better word, have been trying to record objects in the sky in different light spectrums other than what we can see in our human eye. And they sometimes pick these things up that are not visible in our normal visual light spectrums.
Yeah.
Secondly, that's exactly what all the personnel that were encountering the Aguadilla 2013 UAP were giving testimony to. So the agent said that the pilot and the crew members could not see this object with their naked eye. And this object, as you can see in the footage, was flying directly over an airline that was parked on the tarmac. It was flying over highways, parking garages, then over the ocean, over a neighborhood. You could see houses and stuff, then over the beach and into the ocean. And that whole time, no one, the personnel that were on the ground crew of the airport, of the Rafael Hernandez International Airport, they couldn't see it, the pilots and so on. So it was only seen in FLIR.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's really critically important. And Andy, when you were talking with this agent, this is the man who leaked the Aguadilla video. Without him, nobody would know about this. We would not have any knowledge of it. And I thought it was great. Darcy, you were shooting it. Andy, you were talking about it with this man. What else was your impression of this gentleman? He struck me as a very impressive guy, very straightforward. Can you just tell his story a little bit and like why he decided to leak this video and how that all went down?
I believe that we had relayed information to him through Jorge that I was also, the one responsible for leaking those other Department of Homeland Security videos. So it gave him a little reassurance that we were going to do right by him when we met him. So I believe that also assisted in him agreeing to meeting with us. But when I finally met him, number one, I was nervous because this is the video of all videos for me, at least. And I'm meeting the guy who's never been met before, who, like you said, if it wasn't for him, we would have never known this thing existed. And honestly, from speaking with him and meeting him, he seemed like he was being as honest as could possibly be. Gave us all the information that we were hoping to get in regards to, being the individual who was there to have seen it and experienced the entire thing. So it was exciting, and we learned a lot of things too. As a matter of fact, so the waters where that object was seen disappearing into, there's some story behind that area as well. Apparently, those waters were once used heavily by fishermen to get access to that area of the water required a pretty decent trek. It's not something that you could just go, like on foot, and like it's really remote area, and they used to use that to do night fishing. And he would tell us that the fishermen stopped going there because they were seeing what they called the children running in the middle of the night on the shoreline of the beaches while they were either out in the water or doing what they were doing before going out fishing. And it scared them basically to the point of not going back there. But they would talk about how they would see them coming in and out of the waters, and sometimes going in and never coming back out. So that was interesting, and also that direction is the direction of the trench, the Puerto Rico Trench.
Yeah.
So that was another interesting thing.
Yeah, that's the deepest trench in the Atlantic Ocean, second deepest in the world, next to the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. And I'll just mention, I'm near completion of a very long, large collection of USO history. And I'll just add here, Puerto Rico is the top spot as a USO hotspot, in my opinion. There's a few other places in the world that are quite active also, actually many, but I think none match Puerto Rico. None. Particularly all around the island, north, south, east, west shores, all of them. But the northern coastline facing the trench is very intense amount of activity all along that whole coastline, it seems to me. And so I'm just, and you know, I grew up in the New York City area where I grew up a lot of Puerto Rican friends, very active area, like that's just how it is. And I even remember back then, this is long before I did UFO research. You speak to Puerto Ricans about that island, and it seems to me almost everyone's got some kind of UFO story. It's so widespread. It was it kind of blew my mind, you know, as a young person, and then even getting into the research during the 90s and early 2000s, speaking with many folks from Puerto Rico who just had stories, often very casual, like just say I was hanging out with some friends and we would go to this spot. We would often see things, lights coming out of the ocean, going in and that type of thing. So not surprising at all.
Just really quick, Puerto Rico is the first experience I had when I was living down there as a young kid, with a large black triangle that was hovering right over my head. And my father had a friend. We live in Espinal, which is literally right there near the water.
What north, south, where is that?
That's right by Aguadilla, literally right there by Aguadilla,
Okay.
By Crash Boat.
Yeah.
And
north there.
So he basically had told me one day he had a friend who was out fishing with his son the night before, and that day that he saw him, he looked like something was wrong. And when he asked him what happened, he told him that he was night fishing, just him and his son out, you know, by the beach I always played at. And he said that as he was out there, the boat lit up from beneath him and completely lit up all the water underneath him. And that this object moved to the side of the boat, exited the water. He said it was like he said it looked like it had a disc shape to it, but it was all lit up. And then it hovered, came out of the water, hovered over them, and they just freaked out and hauled back to shore. But I mean, I literally grew up around this. I've seen it. We have people in our little town that have had experiences with it. So it's to the point that, like you said, when you speak to people, it happens so much that people wholeheartedly believe that there is a legitimate base somewhere off the coast of that island.
Yeah, I want to. This is a still that I lifted from your film, Darcy. So, but I love this so much. This is a really good graphic. So, for people watching it, the top of the screen is pointing west. So west, and then to the right is north. So if you look at it, you can see that deep, deep, deep Puerto Rico Trench under the water. You just see how deep it is. And it goes down, I think, to 27,000 feet. It's like close to 5 miles down. I mean, it's super deep down there. And I think there's just so much activity coming out of that region. You certainly get it on the other side of the island as well, and both on the east and west coast. But that northern coast of Puerto Rico facing the trench, just like if you are an extraterrestrial civilization that has the ability to establish a secure underwater base, you might really just love to go down to that trench, because no one's going to get you down there.
Well, we
You
saw
are totally secure.
So Jorge actually showed us. I'll see if Darcy can get it from him. He showed me, at least. I don't know if he showed Darcy, but it was two photos or two basically I think it was LiDAR or satellite imagery off the coast of Aguadilla and the trench. And in both images, so the one near Aguadilla, you could see a structure sitting on the ocean floor that did not match any of the surrounding environment, and it looked artificial. It was like a rectangular object. I mean, clear as day with sharp edges, just sitting on the floor.
So this is like a photography that went below the surface of the ocean and was able to get
Yeah,
a kind of
yeah,
oh wow,
similar to the picture you just showed.
interesting, very interesting.
And then another one at the bottom of the trench, where you could see another similar object, but twice or three times as long, sitting right at the bottom of that trench. So that was interesting because there was nothing that resembled it anywhere around.
Well, that the trench is, I think I was reading, it's more than 500 miles long. It's very, very big, and you could hide even an enormous thing down there, I suspect. I really believe.
Apparently enormous things that come out of it. So, I mean, even Lou Elizondo's testimony about this giant black as, I don't know, night object that came out after some like Navy frogmen and a helicopter was hovering over top of, off the coast of Puerto Rico there. That all happened, apparently, right? So
Yeah, well, I wondered if that was the story that David Fravor gave on Rogan a couple of years ago, which
yes,
I took a note of that. So, yeah, Fravor, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but he had a colleague who was stationed out by Roosevelt Roads, that's on the eastern coast there, facing Vieques Island. Major U.S. Navy activity there. They were doing some kind of training, and this helicopter friend of his described a very interesting USO encounter that they had over there. Is that what you're referring to, Darcy? Or is it
indeed.
something else?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very interesting story. Very interesting. And, you have to believe it. I mean, these guys in the Navy, like, you're talking to your Navy buddy about a story. I think you got to take stories like that probably right to the bank. It was very interesting.
Well, there was that.
Yeah.
There was that. I don't remember the exact name of the mission, but it was a space mission that had captured an object exiting. I think it was the Vieques area, and just shot off into space at like incredible speeds. I know I saw a History
STS
Channel.
mission?
Yeah, the STS mission.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned that to me before, but I've never seen the footage that accompanies this this event. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, they captured it from space.
I'm sorry. I want to ask you about some other aspects of the movie, but I just before we leave that whole eastern coast of Puerto Rico by facing Vieques Island, a lot of people are not. If you don't live there, or if you haven't researched it, people probably don't even know that this tiny little island off the coast of Puerto Rico exists. But the U.S. Military has used it for years for ordnance testing and all kinds of weapons testing and the like. The U.S. Navy has a major presence out there, and so that does complicate the whole matter of UFOs, USOs, because people think, what am I watching here? Is this a military thing? Is this something beyond that? I personally feel you've got both things happening out there. The U.S. military is very active there, but some of these objects are just out of this world. That's what I think.
Yeah, Jorge Martin actually wrote a book about so it's all in Spanish. I don't think it's in English, but it's the accounts of former members of security that worked at the Navy base that was on Vieques Island. It's now decommissioned.
Mm-hmm.
These were Puerto Ricans. They were hired to go work, the beat around the base and protect it and so on as security guards. And these guys left that base and said, we saw a UFO touch down on the beach, and we saw occupants get out that were non-human and meet with Navy base personnel and then walk off together. Like, apparently there's all kinds of really strange stuff that's happened around Vieques. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but I know that Jorge also has interview footage that he conducted back in like maybe the 90s or 80s with these former base personnel that said, I saw it all. It was crazy. You know, this is real.
Yeah. It's a relatively remote area for most people, and which makes it ideal if you wanted to do some covert, if you were a non-human intelligence wanted to do covert work, or if you're the US military doing covert work, it's great for both of those. So speaking of contact with beings, you had one gentleman, Andre Maldonado, who you did a fairly extended interview with. The guy was very interesting. I must say, he came across in your film as very sincere, absolutely very sincere. You look at his face, his body language, the way he just talked about everything. I believed him, and his story was pretty out there. He had contact experiences with a human-looking non-human that basically had incredible capabilities, and he also had a very interesting UFO or USO sighting that, in fact, may I show this, Darcy? This is
Go for
another
it.
screen from one of the things I love about your films is you do really cool graphics. This is one. So this apparently, he's a fisherman, lots of fishermen along the coast of Puerto Rico. He's out, I think he said 5 or 6 miles out off the shore, and this tubular object comes out of the water and basically flies over his boat.
I think in this image, he was explaining that actually that was probably Coast Guard.
Oh,
Because
coast. Okay.
the time that he was out in the water trying to fish, there was like aircraft following this object, kind of
Okay.
pacing this in the
Good.
sky over top of him. He said it looked like a cigarette. And that there was another like sort of security boat out there, and they followed this object and he was startled, and that was just one of many.
I see. Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, from the very like high strangeness world of UFOs, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. But he had a couple of interesting experiences that culminated, and like I was thinking, was it like a miraculous healing type of event? Not necessarily, but it was kind of an answer to a prayer. It was a little confusing for me to get every kind of detail that he had to say, but maybe one of you can elaborate on his story.
What do you think,
Well,
Andy?
Is this possible? You both sat with him for an extended period of time. Andy, you're on the hook here. What do you have to say about this gentleman?
Well, so I'm going to touch up on what you mentioned before getting into him, how his genuineness and being truthful. So based off of personal experience, I tend to like to see myself when someone tells a story that has to do with this phenomenon, because that's how I can tell, at least, or for myself, judge if this individual is being legitimate or not, or being honest. Because when I tell my story, I have a passion about it. I'm dead serious. Like it changes you. So when you tell the story, you say it in a specific way that someone who's never really experienced, they can't really grasp that. So that's a good way of being able to tell
Fair
if this
enough.
person is. So when he told this story, I was like, okay, this guy's being 1,000% honest, because there was nothing I can find in that man to say that he was lying. Like every single thing that he told us was, I mean, his absolute truth, his
Yeah.
experience. And,
So
you know, unfortunately,
can you summarize his main points? Because I'm sure people listen to
I
like,
could,
what's this guy have to say?
yeah, I could.
oh,
Really cursory, like
Yeah.
bird's eye view. His father had contact experiences with a possible human-looking non-human intelligence. He had UFO encounters throughout his life over Puerto Rico, while over in the water as a fisherman, as well as like just driving around on the island. And that culminated with his very own encounter with both these non-human, like gray kind of looking beings that were like let's say a servant class to a um, non-human, human looking um, being named Amaron, who apparently is kind of famous on the island of Puerto Rico because there are other contactees that have met this same dude, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
And yeah, Andres is very passionate. He seems very truthful in telling this story. And,
He really does.
you know, he's not, I tried to offer him a bit of money for his time. All these Puerto Ricans would not take my money, Rich. But anyways, they just seemed like they wanted to get the word out that weird stuff is going on the island.
The thing about him, Andre Maldonado, uh, like you watch him, he's a regular guy. He's like everyone that I grew up with. I grew up in a total working class neighborhood environment. Completely identified with this man's demeanor, his his way of expressing himself. He wasn't super sophisticated. I don't say that as a way to knock him. He was just a regular guy. He was a fisherman. He wasn't trying to impress anybody. He was being completely sincere with his story. And this being that he met, which by the way, you did a kind of graphic recreation of it, which I don't have a version of that here, but this is not a blonde, blue-eyed Pleiadian, but it is a very like fit, uh, very like well-conditioned, dark-haired man, um, who, you know, according to what Mr. Maldonado said about this guy, like he said, basically they can live forever. They don't age. They can die if they're killed or some accident happens, but they basically have figured out how to kind of stop their aging process and obviously do other things to enhance their physical well-being. So they can apparently, right, in theory, live for very, very, very long periods of time. And he had all of it, this like deep conversation with this being who had a lot of other things to say to him about uh, life and what they were doing. And I don't know, like when you see a guy like this, he's a fisherman. He's a fisherman, uh, and he's got this incredible detailed story. It's like, where did he get this from? Why
it's,
would you know, I couldn't see a motivation for him just to make up a story so he could get attention. I just couldn't see that.
and that's only part of the interview. Like if you heard the entire thing, I'm actually glad you mentioned the blonde haired, blue eyes, because in this discussion, in this conversation, or these interactions he had with this being, he mentioned that. So the
Who
way he
mentioned?
put it,
Maldonado.
Amaron, the
Oh,
individual that
Amaron did.
he met. Yes. So he basically had explained to him that the blonde haired, blue eyes are them. They are the same species, I guess, but they are the older version of them, and that the way he looked at the dark hair and complexion is like the newer generation. It's almost like the grandfather, that the grand parents, and
Yeah.
they're the like that. That's the way he explained it. So they're the ancestors in a sense, which I thought was pretty interesting because I've never heard anything in regards to this, the way he told this story. Like like you said, to put all of this the way he put it, there's no way he could have just sat there and was like, you know what? In 10 years from now, I'm going to have these two guys come looking for me. I'm going to make this story. So when they come here, they're going to be completely convinced. Like, no, he didn't just fabricate
Yeah,
this
right.
for
Oh,
that interview.
when did he say that he had this experience with Amadron? I actually don't know if I recall that from the film. If you said it, I didn't write it down. When was that? Did he say?
I think it was
Uh,
pretty much the late 90s, like 90, 96, around there, I
Okay,
think.
going back a little bit.
Yeah. And it happened over a course of years. So it wasn't just like, one off. It was a long getting to know somebody type of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you get these contactee cases, they happen. They come from different parts of the world. And I'll be honest and just say, encountering them for many, many years, I have often just kept them at arm's length. I'm like, I don't really know what I think about some of these stories, but I must say, like, there are so many of them. And at a certain point, you look at these individuals, you can see the sincerity, and then it comes down to asking, well, if this person's sincere, what's going to make me not believe it? Am I going to think this person's crazy? Does he seem like he's delusional? This man didn't seem delusional to me. He seemed very down
well,
to earth.
again, keep in mind that he's not the only person who's come with this
Yeah.
name and this description of this individual.
Yeah.
There are multiple people. There's one very famous case, which I really wanted to get into, but I can't.
Well, you guys are going to be discussing that case in the future, so we agreed we were going to get into it. But yeah, it's obviously that this is going on, and it's obvious to me just from the research I've been doing the last few years that Puerto Rico is a very special place for this type of activity. The activity is global, but nevertheless, it seems to me Puerto Rico, maybe it's that trench. I don't know what it is, but there's something different or more intense, it seems to me, about this island than any other place I can think of in terms of UFO, UAP, or USO activity.
High strangeness.
Yeah.
It's not just in the waters either. You have the Ajunca National Forest. There's been tons and tons of incidents that have occurred in that forest. NASA has taken interest in that at one point, where they sent down one of their I don't know what they call it, but it's a plane outfitted with all this technical equipment and sensors. This was I don't remember, Darcy. Was it late 90s or early 2000s?
With regard to what
With
sensors?
the NASA plane that was
Oh,
circling the jungle.
so there was apparently a Roswell-esque crash that happened in the national rainforest of Junque, and Jorge Martin, at the starting of this doc, you'll see some archival footage of him saying like mucho pesinas, like they're coming out of the jungle and going into the jungle and all this stuff. So that rainforest area, all kinds of local people have seen craft and lights emanating from and going into during the day, during the night.
Mhm.
This crash happens, and I think it was probably late 90s, early 2000. And Jorge says that NASA was called in and NASA personnel were being seen by the locals. Now, again, it's a small island, right? So word of mouth travels pretty fast. People
Sure,
say,
yeah.
I'm seeing this, you should see this. They're calling each other or whatever. And all kinds of people were seeing this craft that said NASA on the side of it. It was some kind of like experimental radar plane that was doing circles around the national rainforest after this crash event. And they quarantined off the jungle. No one could go in. The rangers couldn't talk about what was going on in there. The National Rainforest staff. So it was a pretty big event,
Something
and
important came down.
something happened, and not a lot of people have talked about it. So I'd love to go back
Mm.
and try and get some witnesses to that, and record testimony and
It
talk to.
shouldn't be that far. I mean, it's less than 30 years ago.
Yeah. So,
So
and
there should be people around.
maybe people have pictures, maybe people have video footage. Who knows?
Well, yeah, you've got a great resource with Jorge Martin. I would think he's definitely the guy there.
He's the Don.
Yeah, he's earned it. He's done so much great work over the years. I'm just really glad that he got a place in your film. Trying to think what else is that stood out. Oh yeah, I recall there was a gentleman, was it Albert Perez? There was someone who you spoke to who you showed a photograph. In fact, I have it. I don't know if I'm able to show it, of this glowing light under the water.
Yeah, you could show it. You could show all those photos that Andy sent you with the object
Well,
going into the water and stuff like that.
I don't have all of them here, but I can pull this one up. Let me just show you.
Those three photos, those three still
Oh,
images.
yeah, I want to show that, but let me just ask about this one first.
Go.
So you recognize this. This is from your film. So what is this supposed to be? Because this was a very brief moment of the film, and I was very intrigued. This is actually a still from a video.
Yeah. So
Uh,
essentially, that footage was shot by fishermen. Okay. The Halloween season is upon us. If we wanted to just rename this film a horror title, we could just call it The Fisherman, because it seems like Puerto Rican natives that are fishing in the waters are seeing really scary and freaky stuff like this all the time. This footage, we just have a few little clips, and the testimony from the Aguadilla CBP agent, where he is saying, we have been hearing reports of things coming out of the ocean off the coast of the airport here by the fishermen. And then you have this
Right,
footage
yeah.
that became viral in 2020, I want to say three,
Mhm.
or was it early 2024, Andy?
No, I believe it was 2023.
It's about
Yeah,
a year ago.
so this footage came out in late 2023. It was on like TikTok and a whole bunch of other places. And these fishermen are like, NYE, like, what is this thing? And they're following it in the ocean. So obviously, fishermen know the difference between a scuba diver and snorkeling cruise. And
Sure.
I'm a
Mhm.
scuba diver. I've been scuba diving since I was 15. I'm PADI certified. I've been in many parts of the world. I'd love to actually go scuba diving with Andres Maldonado. We mentioned that when we were with him, because he's a commercial diver
Mhm.
and has all of his resources there at his home. But this footage, you do not see bubbles coming to the surface, which you would see from a scuba diving crew.
Hmm.
Also, later on, you do see like something kind of upright. Let's say it's moving like this through the light in the water, kind of hovering through the light. And that also doesn't look like a scuba diver. You don't see any gear on its back. You don't see anything over its head. You just see like this thing that obviously has a humanoid shape hovering through the light, as the fishermen are following it in the ocean, and they get startled when they see this thing.
Yeah, you do show this in your film, and I don't have a still of that, but it was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's just like it's footage accompanying multiple fishermen's testimony
Yeah.
around Puerto Rico that say something non-human is lurking in the ocean. You know what I mean? And a submarine or submersible with a light underwater does look like that. But and scuba divers could as well. But the way that that footage looks like, I'm not convinced it's a scuba diver or a group that was scuba diving. A friend of mine sent me an Instagram where somebody took responsibility for that, but they're going to have to explain to me why the footage looks like that and doesn't look like a scuba diving group.
Yeah, it's true. It's very important to recognize there are scuba divers. They do have lights under the water, and it can be confusing. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I'm glad you got a chance to discuss it. For the last segment, I do wonder if I can pull up these photos that Andy sent me before we started. This is not from your film, Darcy, but Andy, can you talk about these? I think you got these from Jorge Martin. It's okay that we show these? I'm hoping.
Yeah, you could
Yes.
show them.
All right. So this is the first of them. Um, is this by Rincon? Is this the North Shore of Puerto Rico? Can you
No,
say
that's actually
or tell the story here?
that's actually taken the same area you saw the last photo that you posted. That's Crash Boat Beach in Aguadilla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Very good.
yeah, so basically that was seen by multiple witnesses. So these three that you're going to show
Yeah.
are for the perspective of one witness, and then the others are perspective, if I'm not mistaken, from a witness that was further up the mountain. So to get to this beach, the entrance leads you down a mountain that then ends at a parking lot to get to this beach. So it looks like this one was down lower,
Okay.
this witness, and the others were higher up in elevation.
Higher up. Okay, so just describe the scene and how did these come about? When was this in 2021, am I thinking, or was it a different year?
2021, yeah.
2021. Okay. So yeah, can you just tell the story of this? And I'm going to show the other two because they're in a sequence.
So the witnesses saw this object hovering in the air, and quickly were able to pull out their cameras to get these photos.
So here's the
And
first one.
amazingly enough, they captured three photos that clearly show an object going into the water.
Here's the second one, and
So,
here's the third. Boom. Pretty
yeah,
cool. I'll back
yeah,
it up again. You can see the three. One
it is pretty wild.
and wow. So it does look very disc-like. It certainly doesn't look like any aircraft, and it goes right into the water.
And interesting is because I believe that same year, early beginning of that year, CBP had captured. So an agent recorded on his phone, FLIR camera from his office, where an object from those same waters in that same area was actually exiting out. It was a disc object that was seen on FLIR exiting the water, and he was narrating what had occurred beforehand and what was showing on the footage. And he said that this object was first in the sky, then went in the water, and then exited back out. And then you have this sighting of these that these people had, where this object was seen in the air, when entered the water, and then the other photos that I sent you.
Mhm.
What they
Let me show
explained
those.
afterwards was that after it entered, the water in that area was emanating a mist, like a fog, which is odd because there's no explanation for
Let
that.
me show that. So this is the exposure or the look of this image is kind of weird, but is this what you're talking about here?
Yeah, there's another image that doesn't have the editing, the exposure alteration.
Let me see if I can. I don't know if oh, this might
Yeah,
be it.
right there.
Here we go. I probably should have zoomed in on this. My apologies. But I think if people look carefully, you can see this is the same area you're saying.
Yeah,
It hit the
yeah,
magnifying glass at the top middle there.
Yeah, yeah. I should have probably zoomed in on this a little bit better. This is a kind of a close-up
There you
enhanced
go.
version, right? So,
so you could see the mist, and in the originals, if you look at the original photos, you see those two dots where it up on the section here that says salen objetos. Those
yes.
are two objects that was seen exiting that mist after the original one entered. So two more objects came out.
Oh, okay.
which is
It's hard to
Alberto's
make it out, but
photos.
I,
Those are
yeah,
Alberto's photos. Alberto Perez. It says right at the bottom.
yeah.
There you go.
So it's okay that we're showing this. I don't want to get,
yeah, yeah.
Exclusive.
yeah,
So
many
yeah,
thanks to Alberto and Maria Perez and Jorge Martin Miranda, or Jorge, 2021. Do I have any others of these? This is a close-up of it here as well. So yeah, oh, the
there's
objects I see, they were seen. So there were two of them leaving. So one is
two of
seen
them
going into the
exiting.
water, two are coming out.
Yeah, that's what the witnesses described. And then in another photo, I believe those two objects went up into the air, and one of the pictures you could see birds, and the object is higher up in elevation.
Is
So
this what you're talking
those,
about here?
yeah, so those five arrows at the top are pointing at birds, and that lower arrow is the
Is
disk
one
object that was floating higher up in
The
the
vapor.
water.
after it emerged. So there were two that emerged, but there's one that is visible here, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sorry I didn't zoom in on this a little more, but very interesting. So is this still actively investigated? Has anyone done a write-up of this? Has it been published anywhere? It would be really good to get that information out to the world.
Yeah,
The,
it would be.
the only person I know is Jorge. He's the
Yeah.
only real person I know that besides him, like smaller groups that get together, like I think MUFON has a chapter down there. I'm not entirely sure if they're an authentic, legitimate chapter, but it's more like locals that get together and do more of the recording
Yeah.
of these incidents than news or anything like that, because there's no real place for them to go to report these sightings.
Well, we're getting the information out here, but really they deserve the credit for that. And I'm glad that their names are there and we know who they are. We can thank them for that. Very interesting. And well, I'm just really glad to have both of you on here. I mean, there are certain things about this phenomenon that never get discussed enough. It's very good that, we're interested in any kind of disclosure act in Congress. And will there be something that gets into the NDAA or not? Yeah, that's obviously important. We want to know. But I'm always thinking there are so many things that are not discussed when it comes to UAP or UFOs. And uh, one of the things that just blows my mind every day about this phenomenon is that it's global. It's not just happening in the United States, in the continental US, it's everywhere around the world, other regions of the world. Yes, I know Puerto Rico's kind of technically partly connected to the United States, but it's a different place. Puerto Rico is a different place, and it's important. And other regions of the world are important. And I just feel like we don't, as a society, especially as Americans, we do not look at the rest of the world all that much. And it's a problem because this is a global phenomenon and we really need to understand what's going on and who are these intelligences? What are they doing? The experiences that you described in this film, particularly with Mr. Maldonado, I mean, he had, very positive experiences, and that's great. And so, but if that's the case, we should talk about that as well. What is going on here? This strikes me as a very, very significant part of the phenomenon. And I'm just actually very grateful to the two of you for doing this. I mean, a lot of really cool things came out in this film. I love the Aguadilla portion. I love the fact that you interviewed the man who was responsible for getting that video out. That's a score. And thanks to Jorge Martin for letting that happen too.
Yeah. Thanks, Don Jorge Martin and Andy Marcial for, being part of it.
Andy, absolutely.
Without Andy's Spanish and, moving and grooving with
He
the
was
whole,
your ticket through Puerto Rico, man. Andy got you through there.
not this Canadian gringo around the island.
Andy was your meal ticket. He
Right,
made it
people.
happen.
It was good. It was a good
But
adventure.
you were a good team.
Yeah, we had a good time.
It was fun.
You were a good team. Both of you did really great work together. I want to thank you both for being on here. Darcy, I'm going to have links to this film in the description here, and I definitely would encourage people to check this film out. It's it's really interesting. Like all of your films, Darcy, you've you you bring in new people, new voices, um, and you bring. I always love your graphics. I think they add a lot to the film. You tell a really good story, and this is another one of those. But where can people find this film?
Yeah, it's available on Apple TV. That's pretty much the premier streaming network right now. And it's on like Vudu, Fandango now, Google Play, YouTube Red, that type of
Yeah,
place.
okay, all the usual suspects. So
Yeah,
I'll
it'll
have the
become
links below.
available on other networks as the year goes by.
Yeah, it's the way it is. When we're content creators, we're the little guy, we're creating our stuff, putting it out there. The public knows, they understand. So I think people will be glad to see what you've got here. That's my opinion. Uh, I want to thank both of you for being on here with me, and I hope to talk with you both again. Any other projects that you're involved in, I'm always interested. So Andy Marcial and Darcy Weir, it was my pleasure having you on this program tonight.
Thanks,
Thank you,
man.
Richard.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Mine
I
as
want to
well.
I want to thank everyone for participating and for being here with us as well. If you like what I do, if you like this video, first of all, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. You know what to do. Helps me out. If you like what I do beyond that, go check out my website, richarddolanmembers.com. Got a really active community of amazing people who participate uh, there. Uh, and I put up my content on a regular basis there. So do check that out if you're interested. I'll have a link below. And that's it. I want to thank everyone for coming here again this week. I'll be back again soon. Meanwhile, let's keep fighting the good fight. Later.